Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. I am at the Motor City Mad Mouth, and I am pleased to be joined by Mike Tanier, an NFL writer for ages. Mike, welcome to the big show.
Definitely ages. I feel my age when I come here year after year after year to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that now that you segued into it. How many of these have you been to, let alone how many games?
I believe this has been my 15th Senior Bowl that I've covered. I've also done a dozen Super Bowls. And I covered the NFL for years before that, but I didn't travel as much. I've been to 15 or 16 scouting combines. It's been a lot.
Yeah. Have you ever covered any certain team per se?
Yes, I'm based out of Philadelphia. I consider myself sort of a Philly writer. I've written books about the Philly sports scene. And, the Eagles are my primary focus, especially in the last couple of years when they've been such a powerhouse.
You say you have written books, okay? Name some of the books that you've written.
Well, the main one is called the Philly Fans Code. It's a little out of date now. It's back from 2012. But I tried to explain the Philly fan experience. You know how it is with Philly fans, right. Eagles fans. You've heard the whole thing, the Boo Birds, the 700 level. I tried to explain it. The thing is, I tried to explain it so long ago, I think I need to write like 10 more chapters on the end to explain the next things that happened after Chase Utley and after all, Michael Vick and Donovan McNabb and all the things that happened in the past.
Well, everybody's going to ask you, okay, about the booing of Santa Claus, and I'm going to do the same thing. Is it very laughable that anybody can talk about that?
It's amazing because you can see the gray in my beard. That happened before I was born.
Okay.
I was not yet born in this world when that happened. That happened in 1968. I imagine if you go back and look at some other cities and say, what were you doing in 1968? They have some crazy answers. They have some things they were not proud of. In Philadelphia, the main thing is they booed not Santa Claus, but a drunk who went on the field in a cheap Santa Claus costume at halftime of like a 5-degree day. This was not like Santa with reindeer and he looked like the real Santa. This was the cheapest, lamest effort to do something at halftime, and the fans of a last place team in 1968 booed the guy. 58 years later, we're still talking about it. It's amazing that it has legs like that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I can say about Philadelphia sports that I really enjoyed when the Flyers became America's team because of what they did to the Russians over at the Spectrum. And, let's face the reality, the NHL, they were struggling to beat the Russians, and the Flyers had no problem with living up to their Broad Street Bullies name and running them off the ice.
That really is what galvanized sort of like the Philly fan reputation, because there were stories from back then about fights going on in the crowd and the players going into the crowd and players fighting fans in the crowd, and that was happening at the old Spectrum in Philadelphia. So those Broad Street Bullies era, that I was a little kid at that point, but that kind of sort of told us how we were supposed to be as fans, what kind of team we were supposed to root for. So no matter how good a Philadelphia sports team is, the 2024 Eagles, the 2008 Phillies, they're held up to a standard not just of excellence, but sort of toughness and grit. And that's what Philly fans are looking for when they look at their teams.
When they look back at that, do they feel that that's one of the top 5 prouder moments in Philadelphia sports history, knowing what they did to the Russians in the convincing manner that they did? Because I know you've had some good 76ers teams that won a championship, the Phillies and Steve Carlton, and you've had a lot of great players, but let's face the reality, when you look at that moment and that game and that time, that to me will always stand out. I mean, I don't want to brag that the Red Wings snapped their long Stanley Cup drought against the Philadelphia Flyers of 40 years.
You gotta bring that up,
no,
right?
I mean, come on. How many times the Eagles taken it to the Lions? But no, going back to my original point, do they look at that as one of the top 5 moments in Philadelphia sports history?
I don't think those games against the Russians are talked about specifically so much as the Broad Street Bullies and the 1970s Flyers in general are talked about. It's the entire package of the things they did. I think that's part of it, but winning those Stanley Cups, going out there and creating that bruising reputation, that's what's talked about. And you got to remember that in the 1980 Phillies and 1982 Sixers, 83 Sixers, was all that was talked about for 25 or 30 years, because none of the Philly sports teams could win a championship. Always getting close, always getting the playoffs, always having a heartbreaking defeat. So as we got older, my generation got older, and the guys older than us, they would hearken back to that. And again, maybe not so much those specific events, but the things those Flyers teams in general did.
So let's go back to the Senior Bowl. You said you covered 15 of them?
Something like that.
And they were played at Lead People's Stadium. Is that correct?
Yeah, Lad Peoples.
Lad Peoples.
Yes.
Okay, Lad, Lead, whatever. People's Stadium. What was it like back in the day as it was starting to develop its reputation? What kind of access did you have, and what were some of the better players that you've seen come out of the Senior Bowl?
Well, Lad Peoples was a dump. It was an absolute dump. It was like the hard to get around. You would trip over like random like elevations in the sidewalk, and yet another way it was paradise, because back then the level of access, and we're only going back to 2012, 2013. The level of access was so amazing that owners of football teams, general managers, coaches, assistant coaches, agents, scouts, big media people, small media people, fans, we're all together. Like all together in the stands. Sometimes, like seat to seat to seat to seat, there'd be like a mogul and a bigwig and a guy and a reporter. You could talk to the players more. You would see people more in the neighborhoods, and going down Dauphin Street in Mobile. You'd see people out there having a couple drinks. You still see a little of that. It's not the same, and I can't even enumerate some of the guys we saw through here. In those early days, Aaron Donald came through here. Russell Wilson came through here, just superstar after superstar, and in a lot of cases they kind of came and they proved who they were, but there were some guys who made a name for themselves. We just watched a kid by the name of Tyrone Montgomery make a bunch of catches. The kid from, I think, John Carroll University is somewhere in Ohio, suddenly is becoming a name in media circles, going to be a name in fan circles. That's the kind of thing that happens all the time at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, well, the one thing two words that I really like when you're judging prospects is the word hidden gems.
Yeah.
And I think that anytime people, when you look at the evaluation process, let's face it, Senior Bowl starts, and then what do you have? The pro days afterwards, and you have the scouting combine, the actual draft. What are your thoughts about the sequence for how these guys are judged in order to what it takes to make an NFL roster?
It's funny, for the NFL, almost nothing is hidden. And even for the people who organize this, like I say, I just discovered this kid from John Carroll University. Well, he's here, which means the people who organized this event knew who he was and picked up the phone and called him and brought him down here. So the NFL knows about them. And that process nowadays begins in high school, begins in prep. You'll interview a kid and say, when were you first getting recruited by Alabama? And they'll say, I was 14, my freshman year of high school. I was getting phone calls from Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, whoever. And that's the process. But for us, whether it's for media or fans, a lot of times it starts with that handoff from being a college star to being somebody who's on the NFL radar. And that starts with events like the Shrine Game, this particular event, the Combine, because many of us don't have the bandwidth to follow these guys like that. Now is the time for an NFL writer to say, oh, that's who he is, that's what he's thought of, and this is what he looks like, and this is what he sounds like when we get a chance to talk to them.
Have you covered other All-Star games outside of the Senior Bowl?
I have not. I've never had the opportunity to go to the Shrine Game. This has always been the marquee gem of the event. This was the gold medalist, the Shrine was the silver medalist, and there's all these bronze medalists that are out there. I wish I did, because a lot of times I have friends who do it, and you'll get these names that will bubble up from one to the other to the other. In the old days, these started 3 or 4 weeks ago. And a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo began at one All-Star game, went to another, wound up at the Senior Bowl. You don't get as much of that now. The guys who, you're looking for hidden gems. The guys who go to these other bowl games, they really find the real hidden gems that nobody except NFL's, super scouts really know about.
Well, the Hula Bowl, funny, is located in Orlando, and it was in Hawaii.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about the Hula Bowl in general?
I remember those old hula bowls. I'm glad it still exists, but I remember those old days. I think you could get the guys to go to Hawaii. They'd be excited. The problem is back then, how many of them were going on their dime? I'm thinking way back, Bo Jackson, I think he went to the Japan Bowl.
Right.
Yeah, there was a Japan Bowl. They were sending guys out to Japan. I can only imagine the expense of that back in the day to try and fly guys out, get them there, get them food that's not going to, this is your first time eating, sushi or something like that. You're going to get sick before the game. I miss the opportunities that guys had like that. Nowadays, there's common sense to make it a little easier to get to, a little more convenient for family to get down, and a little more convenient for even media people to fly around and get to them. We don't have the expense accounts we used to have, right?
Right. Well, that's true, because our industry right now, let's face it, sports media is taking a hit right now, where a lot of the newspapers have gone down, it's gone digital. What are your thoughts about sports media in general, in terms of how much it's really, unfortunately, taken a hit over the years that doesn't allow us to do what most of these younger kids are never going to get a chance to do?
I pray for it. Honestly, in so many ways, so many of my colleagues who are hanging on. I have the opportunity now as an older guy to go independent. I have my own newsletter. I have subscribers who come to me. It's a blessing to have people who followed me for years and years. If you're a young person coming up, it's impossible to have 15 years of followers, 20 years of followers when you're just starting out. They're battling the fact that there are no budgets. They're battling AI, which turns around and says, hey, whatever you wrote, the computer can write it in 1 minute. Maybe you're better, but the computer's cheaper. They're battling all these things. I don't know where it ends. I hope as consumers, people who watch this, people who love good reporting, they follow good reporters and they follow good outlets and they take the time to do that and to subscribe to them, like and subscribe, something as simple as that, because it makes a difference because everyone's fighting an uphill battle right now.
Yeah, including a lot of the older guys that are retiring because of it.
Right.
So what are your thoughts about the modern day PR person? I enjoyed the day where we just sat there, made a phone call, faxed, or whatever. But nowadays it's becoming more and more difficult to deal with this generation of communications and PR people. I don't know if you're feeling it. I know it's a bigger challenge than I'm accustomed to.
I'm not going to go on the record slamming PR people. I don't think it's going to help my relationship with any of the PR people. It gets increasingly difficult at a couple levels. At the team level, there's less of that enthusiasm to provide access. Players now, the agencies have their PR people. There are all these layers. This was, I don't go back that far. This was happening when I started. I hear tales of the old days. I hear tales of the scouting combine where you sat out in front of the Howard Johnsons and the head coach came out and sat there for 45 minutes and maybe poured beers and you talked. You get less and less of that. I don't think it's good for anyone. I don't even think it's good for the players they're protecting and shielding with this, because it creates this barrier where they don't necessarily know what's being said about them and they can't really communicate for themselves what they're feeling about their careers.
Yeah, see, I would never ask anybody, you or anybody, to slam a particular person. But the one thing that's important about this interview that I'm trying to convey as I get ready to write my second book, Lessons from the Microphone, is the increasingly difficult accessibility that many of us are experiencing. And I think you probably can feel it as well as I can.
Right. Even in the course of, say, the last 10 years, you would ask, hey, can I get an interview? It's like, yeah, we'll get to you. You'll get you 5 minutes, 10 minutes on the phone, whatever. That turned into, no. Oh, what's it for? Why are you doing it? Like these strange questions. Like, why are you doing it? So he's a famous ball player. I'm going to interview him to write a feature about it. It gets harder and harder. And it creates a barrier. The players think they're being shielded, but in a way, it just makes them less human, less real in the eyes of the public out there. And that's where you get where these people who only follow sport through fantasy or through gambling suddenly will be like, I'm going to send an angry text or an angry tweet or something like that to these guys, because they don't see them as real people. And I think that starts with the fact that they never get to be real people because they don't interact with everyday media as much.
So a few questions I want to ask you because they're really fresh off my mind. Number one, I know COVID-19 certainly gave PR people more to work with, knowing what they have more leverage over us than they ever have. Oh, the new way of I can handle this instead of let alone dealing with us.
Yeah, that's it. And I remember there were restrictions that came in and they never went out.
Right.
Well, we're doing this for health, and it's like, well, I respect that. And now we're still doing it for health in 2025. It's like, that's not it anymore. You just got used to the comfort of saying that the access is limited here, there, and everywhere. And it's an unfortunate reality. I stopped railing against the light, especially when it comes to big-time guys. I do a lot of jokes, and I would never slag like a lower-level guy, things like that. I go after coaches, big-time quarterbacks. I'll do jokes. If you're not inviting me in, and I'm not a guest, then I don't have to be nice.
Right.
Then you're just going to create this monster. We're like, oh, I can make fun of you, slag you. If I had a relationship with you, I would never do that.
Right. Well, that's a good point. So what are your thoughts about players doing podcasts per se? Do you think in some cases they're crossing the line a little bit and not paying attention to their sports? Because I've seen a lot of these guys do it. I understand you're trying to prep after, but you got to focus on playing football or whatever sport you are in an effort to make sure you don't lose sight of what got you here so you can do your extracurricular stuff later.
Yeah, I don't worry about that as much because, first of all, everybody has a free time hobby. Go back years, the quarterback had his own TV show. Sometimes I remember Ricky Wooders having a TV show in Philly. Like, that wasn't an unusual thing to do, and these podcasts don't necessarily take that much time. I worry about the ones who don't realize the message they're sending. I'm thinking of Puka Nacua going on these Twitch streams with these oddballs who have these weird, way out there political takes and things like that. See, you're not doing yourself a favor. If you're going to the media and we ask you questions, we're beholden in some way to our outlets, to good taste, etc., that we're not going to go after you. You go on one of these guys, what you see is what you get. He's going to put you in trouble with your coach. He's going to put you in trouble with the public at large to get you to say or do something you shouldn't have said or done.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think you have to be, as a player, you have to be careful. When you actually we talk about coaches, and you have to deal with it. Some of them will not answer, say, well, I'm not going to give you clicks. I'm just going to play it straight. Do you respect a coach that's like that?
Well, I mean, if I know where the coach is coming from, I get that. And sometimes a coach gets asked a stupid question and shuts the stupid question down. And some of them do all this thing where it's double speak, and they'll go on for a paragraph, and then you'll look at your transcript, and he said that was nothing but a stream of cliches. I wish there was an effort there to not be secretive, to not be suspicious on purpose, to not be aloof and shut people down on purpose. Because again, we go back and we remember coaches of yesteryear, the Dick Vermeils and coaches like that, Buddy Ryans, who might have been BSing you, but did it in a way that had some level of respect, maybe giving you something you could use in the paper, even though it was just some BS, or just treating you like a human being. Sometimes you don't get that anymore, and that can be very, very frustrating and alienating for those of us who do it.
I think the one thing I've enjoyed about the Senior Bowl, is I've been able to forget about NIL and the transfer portal. And I'll tell you why I've been able to do it. Because now I'm seeing a guy who's actually going after his dream to play pro football. Yes. And I think that's refreshing because now we see some of these college players looking for 6, 7, 8 years of playing. What are your thoughts when you look at NIL, transfer portal, and the type of athlete that you're seeing in an all-star game like this?
Well, there's two sides to it, and I think we talked off camera a little bit. When I hear this guy's in 7th year in college, I want to see his transcript. Because if you're a student athlete, then that's fine. It's adult education at that point. If you're just collecting paychecks, I have some questions as a taxpayer, a tuition payer, a Rutgers University, et cetera, as to why you're there. The flip side of that, I think we're in the same group, that kid Cuervas, from the receiver from Alabama.
Right.
And we were talking to him, and here's a kid who went to Cal Poly. And he said, I was going to spend my whole career at Cal Poly. And we start talking to him, and he's like, I never thought about the portal, but when I was getting attention, my high school coach said, look at the portal. And when he looked at the portal, these other opportunities opened up for him. That's great. That's not some mercenary who's running around from school to school collecting paychecks, getting Mercedes dealerships, whatever they're doing at that high quarterback level. This is a young guy at a tiny school who discovers there's opportunities there. 20, 30 years ago, that opportunity wasn't there for that young man. So there's two sides to this coin. I hope that things settle down and we see a reality where these kids get to make some money from their fame and their notoriety, et cetera. But we don't have the wild, wild west where you got 26-year-olds going from college to college to college, and they're treating it like AAA baseball.
Well, let me tell you, I've had opportunity the last couple of days to deal with James Brockermeyer, and this guy, the Miami Hurricanes are a cert team. He only played there 1 year, but it only taken him 5 years to get through. I had no problems with a guy like him, because a guy like him, for example, it's one thing to go to a school, you transfer a second time, and then a third for 1 year. I have no problem. Right. It's okay. Right. Coach situation doesn't fit, and now he's here competing. Those are the kinds you don't mind. It's when some of them, like you say, are taking advantage to a point where it gets so absurd where you're on the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th team. Like, for example, Dylan Raiola is another guy who's going to sit behind the Oregon quarter. I mean, this is just ridiculous, man.
But, 5 years in college, a lot of people do 5 years in college. Right. That's it. You need that. And you should have eligibility. You should have those opportunities. It's like 6 years in college. Some people do that. At some point, you are a grown adult among 18-year-olds seeking opportunities. And you're getting opportunities because these coaches are looking at you say, you can win me a bowl game right now, that 18-year-old can't. You're taking, now it's kind of like you're taking state dollars at that point. My tuition dollar my tax dollar should be going to give that kid an opportunity. It's going to this adult who should be pursuing his career. That's why I say, please show me your transcript. If you're doing that, I want to see that you're majoring in biology, and I want to see your lab results and things like that, so that I know that at least I'm not just subsidizing minor league baseball.
Well, I know this week you're only covering the during the week's activities and going home for the Senior Bowl. why are you taking that approach after all these times you've actually gone to games?
You know what? Going to the game can be a lot exciting. It can be a lot of fun. It's a couple extra days in a hotel. And if you're covering the Super Bowl, I'm not this year, and you're doing Super Bowl week, those couple extra days in the hotel, you then have to turn around, get home, do your laundry, hug your children, and fly out. So it's something a lot of NFL writers don't do. We don't cover the games themselves. Also, there's not a lot of interview access afterwards. You get like a quick MVP interview, and that's it. You can get that off the TV if you just watch TV. So I'll be heading home on Friday. I'm going to have a notebook full of notes on the players. I'm going to have a recorder full of interviews, and that's going to be for weeks during the draft. And who is this kid? I had the opportunity to say I talked to him for a few minutes. I looked him in the eye. I watched him on the field. I kind of know a little more about him than I got from watching Saturday afternoons on my couch.
Well, I want to thank Mike Tanier for joining the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. Privilege to get to know you, and we're looking forward to contributing on the South Florida Tribune Media Network on our football shows or anything that pertains to football, as long as it's convenient for a schedule. But you know what, Mike, it's been a pleasure making a new friend. That's a new friend. And when you talk about coming to these events, not only do you look to cover the event, but some of the people that you end up meeting as friends become lifelong friends. And what can I say? It's been an awful lot of fun working with you today, and I look forward to us continuing working together down the road. So once again, thanks. This is Mike Tanier for the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. Also, Lessons from the Microphone. The book one is out, and my goal is to get him in book number 2. And when you come on this show, there's a pretty good strong possibility you're going to get on there. So on behalf of Mike Tanier, my name is Scott Morgan, Rock Motor City Madmouth here in Mobile, Alabama, at the home of the Panina Senior Bowl. Who knows what it'll be called next, but it is that time here over, what is this, Whitney Hancock Stadium?
Hancock-Whitney Stadium.
Yeah, Hancock-Whitney Stadium. Well, I had it mixed up either way. Hancock-Whitney Stadium. It is what it is, people. It's a Hancock and a Whitney. You can call it a first or last name, but that's where we're at doing this show anyways. And once again, Mike, thank you very much for giving me your time, and look forward to hanging out with you next day and working with you on the air. Thank you, sir.
You got it. Stay warm.
Will do.
Sun's going down.